So we have two readings this morning, and they both come from the same text. They are from Viktor Frankl's work, Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl was born in Austria in 1905. He was taking adult classes in psychology by the time he was a teenager, published his first article at 18, was lecturing on the meaning of life by age 22, studied philosophy, earned a doctorate in medicine, and by 25 was organizing mental health clinics in Vienna. He was a prodigy in the field of psychology. He became the head of the neurology department at a hospital in Vienna in 1940, and in 1942, he and his family were moved to a concentration camp. He spent the next 3 years imprisoned. Many of his family members were killed, including his wife. Upon liberation, he continued his career as a neurologist and a psychologist and rewrote the manuscript that had been taken from him when he was first sent to the camps. It was a manuscript that described his new theories in the field of psychology, and this approach was called logotherapy. Basically, it was the idea that a sense of meaning is critical to a human being's psychological well-being, and that the role of therapy is to help people find that meaning, right? Help them on their search for meaning. When he was liberated, Frankl wrote an account of his time in the concentration camps. Our first reading comes from the part of the book that describes that time, and the second reading comes from the part of the book that articulates what logotherapy sort of is. So on the question of beauty and meaning in the concentration camps, Viktor Frankl wrote, "As the inner life of the prisoner tended to become more intense, he also experienced the beauty of art and nature as never before. Under their influence, he sometimes even forgot his own frightful circumstances. If someone had seen our faces on the journey from Auschwitz to a Bavarian camp as we beheld the mountains of Salzburg with their summits glowing in the sunset through the little barred windows of the prisoner carriage, he would never have believed that those were the faces of men who had given up all hope of life and liberty. Despite that factor, or maybe because of it, we were carried away by nature's beauty, which we had missed for so long. In camp, too, a man might draw the attention of a comrade working next to him to a nice view of the setting sun shining through the tall trees of the Bavarian woods, as in the famous watercolor by Dürer, the same woods in which we had built an enormous hidden munitions plant. One evening, when we were already resting on the floor of our hut, dead tired, soup bowls in hand, a fellow prisoner rushed in and asked us to run out to the assembly grounds and see the wonderful sunset. Standing outside, we saw sinister clouds glowing in the west and the whole sky alive with clouds of ever-changing shapes and colors, from steel blue to blood red. The desolate gray mud huts provided a sharp contrast, while the puddles on the muddy ground reflected the glowing sky. Then, after minutes of moving silence, one prisoner said to another, "How beautiful the world could be." Another time, we were at work in a trench. The dawn was gray around us. Gray was the sky above, gray the snow in the pale light of dawn, gray the rags in which my fellow prisoners were clad, and gray their faces. I was again conversing silently with my wife, or perhaps I was struggling to find the reason for my sufferings, my slow dying. In a last violent protest against the hopelessness of imminent death, I sensed my spirit piercing through the enveloping gloom. I felt it transcend that hopeless, meaningless world, and from somewhere I heard a victorious yes in answer to my question of the existence of an ultimate purpose. At that moment, a light was lit in a distant farmhouse which stood on the horizon as if painted there, in the midst of the miserable gray of a dawning morning in Bavaria. Et lux in tenebris lucet, and the light shineth in the darkness. Our second reading this morning, as I said, also comes from Man's Search for Meaning, and it begins to describe logotherapy. He writes, According to logotherapy, the striving to find a meaning in one's life is the primary motivational force in man. And I'm leaving his man, means human. We have to be aware of the tendency to deal with values in terms of the mere self-expression of man himself. For logos, or meaning, is not only an emergence from existence, but rather something confronting existence. If the meaning that is waiting to be fulfilled were really nothing but a mere expression of self and no more than a projection of our wishful thinking, it would immediately lose its demanding and challenging character. It could no longer call us forth or summon us. I think the meaning of our existence is not invented by ourselves, but rather detected. I doubt whether a doctor can answer the question, what is the meaning of life, in general terms? For the meaning of life differs from man to man, from day to day, and from hour to hour. What matters, therefore, is not the meaning of life in general, but rather the specific meaning of a person's life at a given moment. One should not search for an abstract meaning of life. Everyone has their own specific vocation or mission in life. Everyone must carry out a concrete assignment that demands fulfillment. By declaring that man is a responsible creature and must actualize the potential meaning of his life, I wish to stress that the true meaning of life is to be found in the world rather than within man or his own psyche, as though it were a closed system. By the same token, the real aim of human existence cannot be found in what is called self-actualization. Human existence is essentially self-transcendence rather than self-actualization. The world must not be regarded as a mere expression of one's self, nor must the world be considered as a mere instrument or as a means to the end of one's self-actualization. The transitoriness of our existence in no way makes it meaningless, but it does constitute our responsibleness. For everything hinges upon our realizing the essentially transitory possibilities. We constantly make our choice concerning the mass of present potentialities. Which of these will be condemned to non-being and which will be actualized? Which choice will be made in actuality once and forever, an immortal footprint in the sands of time? At any moment, we must decide, for better or for worse, what will be the monument of our existence. Lately, we've been watching as our youngest child, who's about 18 months at this point, is acquiring more and more words. Suddenly he's stringing a couple together, it's always very exciting, or he's coming out with words that I have no idea how he knows. I did not teach him. And he's struggling still, as toddlers do, to make himself understood when he's angry or he wants something in particular. It's all very typical stuff, but I am being reminded daily of how fascinating it is to watch a human acquire language. It's so strange. We arrive into this world with so little capacity, right? So little. And within the first couple of years, typically we've learned so much. How to use our bodies, how to show emotion, how to speak. It's a lengthy and wild process of becoming compared to other animals in the natural world. Learning to express oneself is the first step, right, on the road to becoming your own unique person in this world, separate from your parents, separate from the people raising you. It's the first step our littlest is taking to express desires and dreams and plans for what will hopefully be a long life. And I've been thinking this week, as the signs of spring are all around, about this question: how we grow, how we learn, how we change, how we become. Like the seed planted in the ground, we require nurturing, the right inputs, time, care. These bring forth what is there, and the impact on its unfolding is enormous. And I believe, as Viktor Frankl wrote, that our becoming is intricately tied to the meaning that we find and we make and we detect. I mentioned that Frankl was in concentration camps for 3 years before liberation happened. And in his work, he tells that part of the story. We didn't share it so much this morning, but he writes about the pain, the isolation, the fear, the numbness. He had already trained as a therapist and had been working for one as one for years. And so he entered that time in his life with a different set of emotional and mental tools than many others. His theory of logotherapy, this therapy centered around meaning, had already been formed before his time in the camps. And so we might say that in a way, his theory was tested in the most horrible and bleakest of circumstances. His idea was fundamentally that looking for meaning in our lives is a central piece of human living, that mentally healthy human living requires a sense of meaning, or at the least is motivated by the pursuit for meaning. The theory extended, though, to focus less on the meaning of our own internal individual journey as if it were a closed system, he writes, less on our self-actualization and more on this question of how we move through the world in relation to others and to the world itself. As our reading noted, he was concerned with the world and the idea of each person's place in it, each person's responsiveness to and responsibility for reacting to the world. In the larger book, from which we heard a few passages, Frankl is very clear about a handful of things. He's clear about the power of love. Beautiful passages of his work recall how he imagined and spoke to his wife while he was in the camps. She was elsewhere and then died, was killed. He never stopped being convinced, in spite of everything, that love, that connection that we can find to others, provides some of the deepest insight into ourselves and into the meaning of our lives. He believed in our own responsibility. As the reading quoted, and as he writes elsewhere, we can only really control how we respond to the world. We cannot control the meta happenings. No one of us alone is going to stop a war or a coup or death or anything else. But what we can do is decide how we want to be responsible for our living and our choices, how we want to respond to the world that is beyond our control, and what possibilities we want to make real for ourselves and others and the world at large. He believed strongly that there's no singular meaning to life, but that for each of us and across a lifetime, we will find and uncover over and over the meaning that animates our existence and keeps us going. Frankl notes in the book that in the concentration camps, it was the folks who felt that their lives had meaning and who could imagine a future beyond the camps that were able to bear the suffering the most. Alongside of love, he believed in beauty, the awe that it can inspire. Even in the camps, a sunset, a view of the majestic mountains, a farmhouse in the distance in which a light suddenly appears against the gray. The world around him, even in this unspeakably terrible time, provided affirmation to him of meaning, of possibility, of a future and a world beyond the horror he faced. A resounding yes, he recalled hearing. A resounding yes, that there is meaning and purpose, and he was so clear later in life that the meaning and the purpose don't have to be universal, that it is the call of every human life to seek that meaning for themselves, find the beauty that inspires awe, find the love that transforms. Stories are coming out somewhat daily about folks who are being detained illegally, mostly folks of color. Stories about how they don't know when they will be released or why they're being held or where they will be taken. And the juxtaposition between life as it moves on in our particularities and what is happening all around us is, for me, very stark. I told you yesterday, our Little League began. Kids got their jerseys, they met up with their teammates, and in spite of the rain, they went out to play on the muddy fields. They didn't want to not play. Yesterday felt like fall or winter all over again, but these kids were ready for spring, and they were going to take this chance to play this game they love and run and laugh and wear themselves out under the gray skies. And this is what I can't stop thinking about, that all of that happens all at the same time. What does it mean to be human? What are we called to right now? What does it mean to live in this moment as the flowers burst forth with their glory, and we are reminded that under the hard and muddy ground of winter lies everything needed for the world to renew again? What has yet to blossom within us? What part of our wholeness are we struggling to live into? What must be called forth from inside? What is our responsibility? What is our response now? Transformation is one of those new words that express our values. And the explanation that comes along with that word reads like this: we adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect. We commit to transforming ourselves in the world here in this congregation too. That's part of our mission statement. Transformation is change. Transformation is becoming. And we believe, as that explanation clarifies, that change and transformation aren't a one-shot deal and don't occur in isolation. The word chosen wasn't self-actualization, but transformation. We change, we transform over the course of a life so many times. If you have watched a child grow into adulthood from infancy, you know this. If you have watched adults take seriously the search for meaning and self-understanding, you know this. Transformation is part of what it means to be human. Healthfully, wholly human. Transforming not just to realize our internal wholeness and truth, although we do believe that is vital, that each of us be allowed the autonomy to become who we are, but also transforming in thoughtful and meaningful response to the world around us, as Frankl explained. Responding responsibly to the world around us with our wholeness and with our blossoming and with our dawning and our changing understanding of our place and our purpose, our role and its meaning, responding with clarity. Many of you will have read in an email earlier this week that a couple of weeks ago our pride flag had been stolen. I mentioned it that Sunday morning. And we had also taken down our Black Lives Matter sign because it was showing some wear and tear and we wanted to replace it. The theft of the pride flag, as well as the challenging things occurring at congregations in our county, horrible accusations being made against those congregations that publicly and vocally support LGBTQ+ rights, made us take a beat. Leadership turned to each other and asked the question, do we want to rehang our flags, or should we give some consideration to lying a bit low? I know that some of you were asking yourselves the same question. And I want to say that I think it's a fair question. The balance of our collective safety and our confident declaration of our values and positions in the world is one that we will continue to need to consider from time to time. And for me, I came back again and again to Frankl's call to be mindful of the potentialities that exist, all the manifold possibilities in the moment, and the question of what it is that we want to make real in the world. What do we want to make concrete? And leadership came back to the question of who we want to be and how we want to be known in relation to the world around us. The resounding response from the leadership teams that considered this question was that if ever there was a time for being clear about who we are and what we believe in, the world we want to build, this is that time. The answer of our leadership was, from a shared position of relative safety, we have a duty, a responsibility, to speak out and declare clearly to the world what we believe, what we celebrate. Our pride flag, with its beautiful colors, tells the world that we believe in the right of each person to love who they will love, and that we celebrate those connections as part of what moves and motivates human living. That pride flag tells the world that we believe in the right of each person to live the truth inside them, not harming anyone, just blossoming, transforming into their own unique person and claiming for themselves the life and the name that they want to be their own. We believe, that pride flag tells the world, that the diversity of human expression is part of the search for meaning that is at once our own and our collective work. And our Black Lives Matter banner, with its simple yet powerful declaration, tells the world that we know our history, we understand that oppression and prejudice have shaped and do shape the course of our world, and that they still impact the lives of Black and brown folk particularly. It tells the world that we know it isn't right to make a whole people the enemy based on race or religion or nationality, and that our fate is tied together, and that we have an obligation to those who are being harmed in this world to rise up and to work to end that harm and repair it. It tells the world very specifically that we believe in the work of anti-racism and that we believe that the world actually can be changed, transformed, if we keep trying. Our 18-month-old keeps trying. He gets words wrong, he gets frustrated, he gets scared. At times he is tentative, and at times he barrels ahead like all the world is flowers and love. He's growing and changing like a shoot pushing up through the soil. All of us are. We forget that when we're no longer 18 months. All of us are trying, failing, getting scared, feeling brave, figuring it out together, living right here and now, confronting what is real, while also visioning for what is possible in the future, as Frankl calls us to, never losing sight of that future. That's what keeps us going. We cannot lose sight of what we are working toward. That's why we hang our flags. That's why we gather. That's why we talk and learn and uncover what matters most and make choices about who we want to be and how we want to be. Because meaning matters and the future matters. This is no time or place for nihilism. There'll always be doubts, but if we keep at it, we'll hear that resounding yes. This weekend, our big kids have been in a show at our local children's theater. The show is called Puffs, and it's a comedy written by Matt Cox. It's the unsanctioned, untold story of the House of Hufflepuff from that series about the kids and the magic school and the very evil person whose name you can't say. And the show runs through 7 years of magic school in just under 2 hours. And it focuses on the quiet and the shy kids, the kids who aren't brave or smart or evilly cunning. They're just kids, everyday kids. And it focuses on a trio of friends, Wayne, Megan, and Oliver. Wayne spends the whole 7 years wishing to become someone important, someone special, a hero who saves the world. He longs to be the center, the one that everybody knows. He's absolutely terrified that his life will be meaningless. And when the final battle in the last year arrives, the Puffs have to decide if they're going to stay and fight and risk their lives or if they want to run to safety. And in a speech, one of them convinces the others to stay, saying, "Sure, it would be easy to leave, but wouldn't it be wrong? We should do what's right." And they all agree to stay, and many of them end up dead. It doesn't shy away from that fact. And of that main trio, Wayne ends up dead and ends up encountering the headmaster again in some sort of afterlife. And Wayne asks what the point was. What was the meaning? What was the point? Why did he live? Why did he die? Why didn't he get to be what he wanted? Important, a hero, a world changer. Why did Harry get to do it and he didn't? He asks the headmaster, "Why did I have to be so unimportant?" And the headmaster says, "It's very easy to feel like you're only a secondary character in someone else's grand story. That does not mean, however, that there isn't another story out there that's all about you, the one where you're the most important person in the world, the hero. We're all important, and we're all unimportant. We're all heroes in some way to someone, and there's only one magic we ever really need, a magic that will let you live on, the greatest magic there is, love." In the concentration camps of World War II, Frankl never lost his faith in love. He never lost his belief that the world was meaningful and his life had purpose. Of course, he doubted these at times. And even in that doubt, he allowed the world to speak to him in sunsets and mountains. The world speaks to us now in this springtime of the year. It's calling out to us, reminding us that becoming happens over and over. Transformation is real and ever possible. The beauty of this world is vast and ever present. And we get to choose. We get to choose how we want to respond to the beauty and the possibility of these lives that we share. May we respond with openness and our own blooming. May we respond with awe that inspires meaning. May we respond with clarity and responsibility. May we respond ever mindful of the future that we are planting. So may it be.